Before the sun and moon, before mountains were raised or oceans poured, reality itself was born from a single act of music. And within this celestial symphony, the first evil was not an act of violence, but a discordant note, a lie sung into existence that would forever poison the world. The War of the Ring was but the final, fading echo of this first corruption. In the beginning, beyond the circles of the world and the constraints of time, there was only the One. He was called Eru by the elves, the one who is alone, and Ilúvatar, the Allfather. He existed within the timeless halls, a realm of his own making, a concept more than a place. For in the beginning, there was nothing but him. His mind was the canvas upon which all that ever was, is, or will be, would eventually be painted. From the boundless depths of his thought, he brought forth the first beings. They were the Ainur, the holy ones, the offspring of his thought. Each was a distinct and powerful spirit, a fragment of the divine consciousness, yet none could comprehend the entirety of Ilúvatar's mind. They were like individual instruments in a theoretical orchestra, each capable of producing a magnificent sound, but unaware of the grand composition they were destined to perform. For a time that cannot be measured, they dwelt with Ilúvatar, learning, growing, and coming to understand the portion of the Allfather's mind from which they were made. There was Manwë, who loved the winds and the skies, and understood most clearly the will of the One. There was Ulmo, whose thoughts ran deep like the lightless chasms of the sea, who dwelled alone and conceived of water and its music. And there was Okal, the smith, to whom was given skill and knowledge of substance and craft, the maker of the very bones of the world. They and many others lived in harmony, each contributing their unique understanding to the silent majesty of the timeless halls. But among them, one was greatest. His name was Melkor. To him, Ilúvatar had given the greatest gifts of power and knowledge, and he had a share in the gifts of all his brethren. He was preeminent among the Ainur, a being of unimaginable splendor and might. But his power was paired with a terrible impatience. He burned with a desire to bring into being things of his own, to fill the vast emptiness of the void with his own creations, born not of Ilúvatar's thought, but of his own. He envied the ultimate power of creation. Melkor sought the flame imperishable, the secret fire that gives life and reality to all things. He believed this was some secret power that Ilúvatar withheld, a tool he could find and wield for himself. But the secret fire was not a thing to be found, for it was with Ilúvatar, a part of his very being. Melkor's long and lonely search in the void found nothing, but it shaped him. The silence and the emptiness began to fill his own spirit, and his thoughts grew different from those of his brethren. A seed of resentment took root. He began to conceive of a world ordered not by a divine plan, but by his own singular dominant will. But how does a being of pure thought, born from a perfect creator, begin the path to absolute evil? The answer lies not in a choice made in a single moment, but in a slow, subtle twisting of the soul. For Melkor, this corruption began with pride, a belief that his part of the whole was, in fact, greater than the whole itself. This is the foundational question of Arda. How can a perfect creator give rise to imperfection? Then, a time came when Ilúvatar called all the Ainur together and spoke to them, proposing a new, great theme. He bade them to draw upon their powers and their understanding to build this theme into a great music, a harmony of voices more profound than any had ever conceived. He declared that he would sit and listen, and be glad that through them such great beauty had been wakened into song. The Ainur were filled with joy at this prospect, a chance to finally unite their individual knowledge into a single, glorious act of creation. And so began the Ainulindalë, the music of the Ainur. At first, it was a sound of immense and perfect harmony. The voices of the Ainur, like harps and lutes, pipes and trumpets, viols and organs, wove together the theme of Ilúvatar into a music that filled the void. The sound echoed in the darkness, and the darkness was not empty. As the theme progressed, the Ainur began to understand more fully the mind of their creator, and each other. They saw the beginnings of a story, a history taking shape within the sound. Manwë, song soared into the high airs and the majestic clouds. Ulmo's deep voice sang of the waters, from the smallest raindrop to the mightiest ocean. Oshul, Mira's music was of the substance of the earth, the strong and enduring foundations of rock and metal. A world was being born in song, a vision of unimaginable beauty, a testament to the perfect harmony of Ilúvatar's thought. It was a symphony of truth. But then, the thought of Melkor began to stir. He remembered his lonely journeys in the void, the themes he had conceived there that were his alone, themes that owed nothing to Ilúvatar. He longed to weave these things into the music, to enhance its power and glory with the stamp of his own will. He saw the beauty being created, and in his pride, believed he could make it better, grander, more aligned with his own vision of power. And the discord of Melkor arose. His music was loud, repetitive, and vainglorious. It contended with the theme of Ilúvatar, seeking not to blend, but to conquer. It was a sound of trumpets braying, of drums beating, a clamorous and arrogant noise. This was the first lie, a lie told not with words, but with the very fabric of creation. It was a declaration that his own part was more important than the whole, that his will should supplant that of the Creator. The symphony faltered. A great disquiet fell upon the Ainur. Many grew silent, their own songs overwhelmed by the boisterous discord. Their thoughts were darkened, and the music of their hearts faltered. Yet some were drawn to Melkor's theme. They found its power and its seeming complexity attractive, and they began to attune their own music to his, abandoning the original theme of Ilúvatar. The beautiful, unified creation was fracturing, its core purpose being corrupted from within. The war for the soul of reality had begun, before reality even truly existed, and Ilúvatar listened. Then Ilúvatar arose, and the Ainur saw that he smiled, and he lifted up his left hand, and a new theme began to sound amid the storm, like and yet unlike the first theme, and it gathered power and had a new beauty. This was the second theme of Ilúvatar. It was a direct answer to the discord, a powerful current of music that sought not to erase Melkor's sound, but to engage with it, to wrestle it back into harmony. It spoke of sorrow and suffering, but also of endurance and hope. The music became a battleground, but the discord of Melkor rose in uproar to contend with it. His rage and pride amplified his song, and he poured all his might into his counter-theme. The sound of their struggle was like a furious tempest of dark and light, a war of sound that shook the timeless halls to their foundations. The violence of their competing melodies grew so great that many of the Ainur stopped their song in terror and bewilderment. The vision being woven was now one of unending conflict, of beauty constantly marred by violent pride. Melkor's lie was now attempting to shout down the truth of creation itself. Then Ilúvatar arose a third time, and his face was terrible to behold. He lifted up his right hand, and it seemed that a third sound grew, one that was wholly different from the others. At first it was soft and sweet, a mere ripple in the storm, but it took into itself the warring themes, absorbing them, weaving both the pristine beauty of the first music and the roaring discord of Melkor into its own design. This third theme was slow, wide, and deep. It was inexorable. Its beauty was profound, laced with a sorrow that was deeper than the seas. It took the arrogance of Melkor and the suffering it caused, and it made of them something new, something poignant and beautiful in its tragedy. The third theme did not destroy the lie. It made the lie itself serve a greater, more complex truth. It demonstrated that even the greatest evil could ultimately be turned to the purpose of the One. Melkor's discord was not silenced. It was simply made part of a story far greater than his own. Overwhelmed by its majesty, his own furious music faltered, finally subsumed by a design he could not comprehend and could never hope to dominate. Then Ilúvatar raised both his hands, and in a chord more profound than any note of the music, a sound that was both the beginning and the end, the music ceased. And as silence returned, Ilúvatar spoke. He told them that they would now see what they had made with their great symphony. He would show them the meaning of their song, both the harmony and the discord, and he made visible the thought of their minds. They saw a world, a globe in the void, and it was sustained by that void, but was not of it. And as they looked and wondered, this world began to unfold its history, and it seemed to them that it lived and grew. The Ainur gazed upon the physical manifestation of their music, a place both beautiful and broken, perfect in its conception yet marred in its execution. They saw the work of Akule in the shape of the lands, the touch of Manwë in the skies, the power of Ulmo in the restless seas. But they also saw the bitter and violent influence of Melkor's discord made real. They saw raging fires that consumed the new forests, biting, merciless cold that froze the seas, and vast earthquakes that shattered the new mountains. The very fabric of this new world was a war between the two intentions. Melkor watched this, and a dark pride filled him, for he saw his own power given shape. But his pride was mixed with a secret, burning hatred, for he saw that his evil was still, in the end, bent to the glory of Ilúvatar's ultimate design. The world was more beautiful for its tragedies, more profound for its sorrows. And in the midst of this unfolding history, something new appeared that none of the Ainur, not even Melkor, had conceived. For they saw the coming of the children of Ilúvatar, the elves and men, the firstborn and the followers. They were the central figures of the third theme, beings created by Ilúvatar alone, sent into the world to live within the music. The Ainur looked upon them with utter astonishment and love, for the children were fair and strange, beings of mind and body, fated to live within the physical world and experience its joys and sorrows directly. They were the ultimate purpose of the music. Melkor, more than all others, was filled with a burning desire. He saw in the children a people he could rule, subjects to bend to his will, to corrupt and enslave. He would become their master and their god, twisting their love for Ilúvatar into fear and worship of himself. He poured all his envy, all his hatred, into this new desire to dominate the masterpiece of his creator. The vision of the world's history continued to unfold, showing the fates of elves and men, their triumphs and their great sorrows, all deeply intertwined with the lingering malice of Melkor's discord. And the Ainur watched, and many of the most powerful among them felt their hearts ache with a desire to go down into that world, to protect it, to guide the children, and to fight the evil that they now knew would await them there. The vision was beautiful, but it was only a vision. It had no being of its own. When the vision had played out, Ilúvatar spoke again. He told them he knew the desire of their hearts, the yearning to make real all that they had seen, to give substance to the mountains and life to the seas, to walk among the children and guard them from the evils they themselves had unwittingly helped to create. And so, he offered them this choice: to remain as spirits of thought in the timeless bliss of his presence, or to descend into the world of their vision, to be bound to it, to become its guardians and its powers until the very end of its days. The cost would be immense, their power would be contained within its borders, but the reward would be to make the great music real. He looked upon the void where the vision had been, and Ilúvatar said, "Ea, let these things be." And with that single word, Ea, a new star ignited in the void. The universe was born, and the music was given a home. But here lies the terrible, hidden price of that choice, a truth that was also a prison. In choosing to enter this new reality, called Arda, the kingdom of earth, the great Ainur were forever binding themselves to it. Their power, once limitless as thought itself, would now be contained. They would be subject to the slow grind of time, to weariness, and to the sorrows woven into the world's very fabric by Melkor. So why would they accept such a fate? Why would immortal spirits choose to be caged within a flawed creation? It was a choice born of love for the children yet to come, but perhaps also of hubris, the belief that they could outmaster the discord they had helped unleash. And they would not be going alone, for Melkor, mightiest of them all, was already there. He descended first and fastest, his mind burning with a singular, terrible purpose: to claim the new world Arda as his own. The great Ainur who had chosen to descend followed him, a host of shining stars against the infinite dark. They were the Valar, the powers of the world, and they came not to conquer, but to build, to cherish, and to prepare Arda for the coming of the children. But the world they found was not the pristine paradise of their vision. Melkor had been there first. The land was in turmoil, a symphony of chaos, where Melkor's will raged against the very substance of creation. The elements were at war. Fire fought with water, air with earth, light with a darkness that was more than mere absence. It was a hungry, living malice. And so began the first war for Arda. It was not a war of swords and shields, but a war of creation itself. When the Valar raised mountains in majesty, Melkor would shatter them from within. When Yavanna sowed the seeds of the great forests, Melkor would scorch the earth or bury them under mountains of ice. When Ulmo carved the great rivers, Melkor would choke them with filth and poison. This was their labor through uncounted ages of time, to build a world while its mightiest power sought only to unbuild it. Yet they did not despair. For every peak Melkor toppled, Oskel raised 2 more. For every sea he boiled, Ulmo filled it again with life-giving waters. For every seed he destroyed, Yavanna planted 1,000 more, hiding them deep within the earth, waiting for their time. They worked against the grain of his malice, weaving their own themes of order, life, and beauty back into the marred music of the world. They labored on, not for themselves, but for the children they had seen in the vision. They were preparing a home for the elves and for men, even if that home must be a fortress, a world built upon the foundations of a timeless war. The shaping of Arda was not an act of peaceful creation, but a desperate, glorious struggle against the shadow that had entered with them, a shadow they could never truly defeat, only endure. The world was born in song, but it would be forged in conflict. This was but the first echo of the great music, a prelude to the ages of strife and splendor, of the light of the two trees, and the long darkness of Morgoth's reign. The story of the Valar's labor, of the awakening of the elves, and the great wars for the jewels known as the Silmarils, is yet to be told. To witness the full saga of the First Age, from the creation of the world to the last stand of heroes against the dark, subscribe now to the _Silmarillion_Chronicles, and join the journey into the heart of the Legendarium.